The quiet power of the GP100. In the seconds before a trigger is pulled, a revolver reveals more than its silhouette. It exposes its character. The Ruger GP100 is one of those rare handguns that doesn't court attention with flash or finesse. It's built to endure, to accept hard use without complaint, and to keep working when everything else is failing. This is not a story about glamour. It's about engineering choices, thick steel, simple mechanics, and a philosophy that values toughness over trends. For many shooters, the GP100 is the kind of tool you reach for when you want something you can trust, not something you'll post on social media. But trust can breed complacency. A sturdy frame and reliable lockup lower the chance of failure. They do not eliminate it. In the coming minutes, we'll look beyond the reputation and into the realities. What makes the GP100 so dependable, where hidden risks lie, and how a single oversight can turn a dependable revolver into a dangerous one. Listen closely. Respect for a gun begins before you load it. Now let's trace the origins of the GP100 and the design decisions that shaped its ironclad reputation. Origin and design philosophy. Built like a tank. The GP100 didn't arrive as a fashion statement. It was conceived as a practical answer to a simple brief. Make a revolver that will keep functioning when everything else gives out. Ruger's engineers leaned into over-engineering. Thicker steel in the frame and cylinder, generous margins at stress points, and a geometry that favors strength and longevity over shaving off ounces. This philosophy shows in every contour and casting mark. Where other manufacturers trimmed metal to save weight or cost, Ruger left it alone. The result is a firearm that tolerates heavy magnum loads, years of hard use, and the kind of rough treatment that would rattle lesser designs. But that durability is deliberate, not accidental. The GP100's heft and conservative dimensions are a design choice meant to trade portability for peace of mind. In practical terms, that means predictable lockup, a heavy-duty yoke and crane assembly, and a cylinder meant to withstand repeated impact and pressure. Those decisions shape the GP100's reputation among police, outdoorsmen, and shooters who prize dependability above all else. Yet the same choices that make the revolver nearly indestructible also influence how it should be handled. Its weight changes how it recoils in the hand, its strength invites stronger ammunition, and its longevity depends on respectful care. Mechanical heart. What's under the surface? Beneath the GP100's familiar lines lives a straightforward, purpose-driven mechanism. Not flashy, but brutally effective. At its core are a few deliberate features that explain why the revolver feels so solid in the hand. A transfer bar safety that prevents accidental discharge unless the trigger is fully pressed. A robust frame with an integral sight mount that resists shock and drift. And a cylinder crane designed for both strength and repeatable alignment. These parts don't perform miracles. They do one thing well. They keep the cylinder indexed and locked at the exact moment the firing pin strikes. That precision is why the GP100 returns consistent shot-to-shot performance and why it can tolerate stout magnum loads without catastrophic failure. But precision depends on condition. Pins wear, springs relax, and surfaces that were once close-fitting develop play. When that happens, timing can slip, and the safe, reliable interface between hammer, cylinder, and barrel begins to fray. The transfer bar system is a safety breakthrough compared with older designs that left a pathway for the hammer to strike a primer unless the hammer rested on an empty chamber. With the transfer bar, the hammer can fall without contacting the firing pin unless the trigger has intentionally moved the bar into position. It's an elegant layer of passive safety, but it assumes the mechanical geometry remains correct. If a pin is worn or a spring weakens, that safety margin shrinks. Another overlooked strength is the GP100 cylinder lockup and the extractor sure-star geometry. Ruger engineered these so the cylinder closes tight against the forcing cone, minimizing gas blowby and preserving accuracy. When lockup loosens, whether from heavy use, poor timing, or damaged parts, you start seeing symptoms: mild shifts in point of impact, louder muzzle blast through the cylinder gap, or rough extraction. Those aren't merely nuisance problems. They're early warnings that the mechanical heart is losing shape. In short, the GP100's internals are honest and forgiving. up to a point. They reward careful ownership with decades of dependable service, but they also make it easy to assume built like a tank equals maintenance optional. It does not. Understanding these internal systems is the first step to keeping the revolver both safe and true. Wear and timing, the invisible enemy. Wear doesn't announce itself with drama, it creeps in quietly. 1,000 tiny contacts, microscopic abrasions, and gradual spring relaxation that together shift the geometry the gun depended on. With revolvers, the single most critical casualty of slow wear is timing, the exact choreography that rotates, locks, and aligns the cylinder each time the hammer falls. Good timing is almost invisible when it's present. There's a crisp, positive click as the cylinder indexes. The cylinder locks snugly against the forcing cone. The extractor operates smoothly. When timing begins to drift, the symptoms start small. A faint extra click before lockup, a subtle change in trigger feel, or slightly rough extraction. Those small signs are the first whispers of a problem that, if ignored, can become dangerous. Why does timing matter so much? Because the revolver depends on perfect alignment. If a chamber is even a fraction off when the firing pin strikes, gas and pressure that should move down the bore can escape through the cylinder gap. And in extreme misalignment, a bullet can meet the forcing cone edge at the wrong angle. That isn't theoretical. It damages metal, creates erratic pressures, and can lead to fractured parts or a projectile that noses off course. The usual culprits are predictable: worn pawls and hand teeth, rounded or chipped ratchets on the cylinder, fatigued springs, or a loose crane, use yoke assembly. Hard shooting with heavy magnum loads accelerates the process. So does gritty, poorly cleaned lubrication that turns abrasive dust into a microscopic file working on bearing surfaces. The remedy is straightforward and it's practical. Inspect, measure, and act before the symptoms deepen. Perform regular visual and functional checks. Watch the cylinder lock up under light while operating the action. Feel for play in the crane, and listen for any abnormal sounds during rotation. Clean and lightly lubricate pivot points, but avoid heavy oils that trap grit. And when something feels off, a new looseness, a shift in where the gun points, or extraction that suddenly resists, stop shooting and have the revolver looked at by a competent gunsmith. Think of timing like alignment in a car. Misalignment starts as a minor annoyance and ends with accelerated wear or catastrophic failure. The GP100's heavy-duty construction masks early wear better than many lighter guns. That's part of its virtue. But it also lulls owners into complacency. The smartest owners treat small changes with urgency, because in firearms, prevention is the most effective safety feature of all. Maintenance. Small habits, big payoff. A little attention on a schedule keeps small faults from becoming catastrophic. Set a simple routine. Quick visual and function checks every time you handle the gun, a light cleaning and lubrication after each shooting session, and a more thorough inspection every few hundred rounds, or sooner if you run hot magnum loads. Look for looseness in the crane, any unusual resistance when extracting, and changes in the trigger's cadence or feel. When parts begin to show play or the action develops rough spots, replace worn springs and pins rather than letting them continue to wear mating surfaces. Those modest interventions are cheap compared with repairing damage, or worse, dealing with an unsafe failure. When to call a gunsmith, know your limits. There's a long list of sensible owner maintenance tasks: cleaning, light lubrication, visual checks, and a short list of jobs that should go to a qualified technician. If timing is off, if the cylinder won't index cleanly, if you detect cracks, or if root cause troubleshooting requires disassembly past common user serviceable points, stop and get professional help. A gunsmith can measure tolerances, retune timing, and fit replacement parts so the revolver returns to factory-safe geometry. Trying advanced repairs without the right tools or experience often makes the problem worse. Ammo choices. Match respect with restraint. Part of responsible ownership is choosing ammunition appropriate for the platform and your goals. The GP100 was built to handle stout loads, but that doesn't mean every available hot magnum should be your default. Select cartridges that suit the frame, your recoil tolerance, and the intended use. Training, hunting, or defense. Rotate between full power practice loads and lighter rounds when drilling fundamentals. This reduces cumulative stress on springs and locking surfaces while keeping you comfortable behind the gun. Above all, avoid experimenting with hand loads that exceed published pressures unless you know exactly what you're doing. Carry, storage, and everyday use. Don't let strength replace sense. Because the GP100 feels indestructible, people sometimes treat it as if it requires less care in daily life. Storage choices, holster fit, and how you transport the revolver all affect long-term reliability. Use holsters that cover the trigger and support the weight securely. Store the revolver in a dry, cushioned place where it won't be knocked against other metal. Regularly inspect carry rigs for wear that can alter draw speed or retention. And remember that environmental grit, sand, salt, or road dust does more damage when combined with heavy oils that trap abrasives against moving parts. Human factors. Training the operator, not just the tool. Mechanical dependability only matters if the user respects and practices with the firearm. Regular, deliberate practice builds the reflexes and habits that prevent accidents. Proper grip, smooth trigger press, immediate attention to unusual sounds or handling cues, and drills that include malfunction recognition and safe response. Familiarity reduces the chance you'll miss subtle changes that signal emerging wear. Treat competency as part of the maintenance plan. A trained operator is the best early warning system for a gun beginning to fail. Respect first, confidence second. The GP100's reputation for toughness is well earned, but that toughness never replaces vigilance. Durable construction gives you a margin for error, not a license to ignore upkeep. Inspect often, use appropriate ammunition, send it to a gunsmith when something deviates from normal, and keep sharpening your skills. Do that, and the revolver will repay you with long, predictable service. Remember the first rule: respect starts before the cylinder is loaded.